On August 22nd, 1996, 22-year-old Debbie Dorian was discovered bound, gagged, raped, and murdered in her apartment. Her father was the one to have made the horrific discovery, and to this day, her killer has never been apprehended, and her case has gone cold. However, he did leave behind his genetic marker, his DNA. Though he would lay dormant for nearly 3 years, he did strike again, raping at least 7 more women in the Visalia, California area, linked to all of those crimes through his DNA. But Debbie would be the only known victim to have died at his hands. With DNA technology having advanced by leaps and bounds over the last 22 years, as well as some recent, very high-profile cases in California that had long been cold being solved, it is our hope to shine a light on Debbie's case, to bring this killer and rapist to justice, and a measure of closure for Debbie's family and friends who have waited much too long for answers. With the blessings of Debbie's mother, Sarah, and the help and guidance of her best friend, Katina, Killafornia Dreaming and Orbital Jigsaw are bringing you their story in episode 64, The Unsolved Murder of Debbie Dorian.
Welcome back to Nature vs. Narcissism. I'm Heather, and tonight we have...
Hey guys, it's Warbaby from Murderous Minors, Killer Kids.
Sweet. Okay, so this is like our second collaboration because it's super fun. I really don't cover a lot of killer kids cases. That's more your area of expertise. You do it in such a professional way too, because you take out most of the gore. You kind of get to the main points about it, so it makes it a lot easier to listen to, I feel like. So if you would tell everybody how they can find you, what your podcast is about.
As I became a parent and even just got closer to becoming a parent, I noticed that kids really are capable of a lot more damage than we want to believe. Find me on any podcatcher. It's Murderous Minors, Killer Kids, and I'm on social media at Killer Kids Pod.
Awesome. Yeah, yours was actually one of the first true crime podcasts I started listening to, so I really love it. It's super easy to listen to, and the episodes aren't like 2 hours long, which there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes I like to just binge one podcast and get it done so I can be caught up on all the episodes, and yours makes it really easy to be able to binge all of them at once and not stop, so...
Well, and I wish they were longer. I try to just keep it around half an hour. It's not the happiest subject, and usually my stories don't ever end. There's nothing good at the end of them to look forward to. So it's best to kind of wrap it up as quick as I can. And I don't try to linger on too many horrifying details because there's a lot of other shows who do that really well. I'm just really cautious, too, about the fact that a lot of these kids get out of prison and maybe listen to podcasts. And a lot of their family and friends probably do. And I wouldn't want to ever disrespect someone and portray them in a way that was mostly my opinion.
Very, very good points there. Like, at first I laughed, but I get where you're getting. Like, at first I laughed because I'm like, oh no, like the kids are going to come out and kill us. I never thought about that. I thought about like the adult prisoners and murderers right now. I'm worried enough about them.
I mean,
but...
some of these people I've written about were kids, but like maybe more closer to my age now, you know what I mean? So it's like, I just try to be respectful. I'm not trying to pass judgment, and I'm certainly not trying to solve any crimes that people have already been punished for or are doing their time for. It's just more about just keeping people aware that there's things that go on in kids' lives and factors that go into these crimes that we actually have a little bit of control over. A lot of other shows, occasionally they'll cover a killer kid, but we're not really looking at the same things usually.
Right.
It's usually the bigger profile cases, but there's a lot of them that don't get that kind of coverage, whose stories are as important for other parents and even other kids to hear.
Before discussing the case, I wanted to ask you if you knew a little bit about the state that it happened in is Indiana. So did you know that under extreme circumstances, children as young as 10 years old can be tried and sentenced in adult courts?
Well, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all. Is that still the case now, or was that the case in 2010?
The article that I pulled that from was from 2012, so it was still a thing then. However,
Okay, so
I think
something
they've
interesting,
changed
yeah,
it
did
since
happen
then.
after that.
Yep. Okay, do you want to tell them who we're talking about?
Today we're talking specifically about Paul Henry Gingerich, who in 2010 was 12 years old, and he is basically a co-conspirator to a murder that I feel like was really planned by Colt Lundy. There's really no other way around it. Talking about Paul Henry Gingerich, he was 12 and Colt Lundy was 15 when they together murdered Colt's stepfather.
Yeah. And the reason we're focusing more on Paul is due to his age and how he was classified as the youngest person sentenced in an adult courtroom, correct?
Yes, at the state. He was the youngest juvenile to be sentenced as an adult. So Colt,
he was an instigator.
My issue with him is that, even after all these years, because it was 2010, he's in his 20s now.
Yep.
But I didn't get a sense that he really takes responsibility that this was his idea.
Yeah, he did say a few things. So I guess we should start kind of at the beginning, just to kind of let people know where we stand in this. So I do believe that he was the instigator. I do believe that he was the mind behind the crime, if you will. But he was hanging out with Paul and with at least one other boy, Chase. And
yes.
I believe they were having a conversation at the park that day, talking about wanting to run away to Arizona, but they couldn't because Colt Lundy's stepfather would definitely come after them. He wouldn't be allowed to. He would be in trouble, so he had to take care of him, quote unquote.
Colt says his motivation in them killing his stepfather was that he wanted to run away because he was an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And then he says that it came up that they should get rid of Phillip Danner, the stepfather, so that they could steal his truck and do all those things without him noticing.
Mm-hmm.
So Colt and the 12-year-old, they do go back to the home where Phillip is. Colt retrieves his own stepfather's guns.
Yeah, which to me just blows me away.
Oh.
It's
terrible.
It's so sick.
And you're named after a gun. I mean,
yes. Oh, yes. I was wondering if you knew that. Okay, of course you did, but it's, yeah.
Self-fulfilling prophecy if I've ever heard one. And your stepfather taught you to be a marksman.
Yes, an expert marksman, too, because then I believe, was it his mother or his aunt?
Phillip Danner's sister.
Yeah. So the Colt's aunt, I guess, said something later on about where he had shot him, and she's like, yeah, I knew it was him because he was an expert marksman. I'm like, oh my God. But we'll get to that, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, so the boys climb through the window, Colt climbs through, and then Chase, the other 12-year-old boy who's in on this so-called scheme, he decides he doesn't want anything to do with it. So he stays outside. Paul climbs in, Colt gives him a gun. The two boys are now in the house with Phillip. See, here's something that Colt says that makes me uncomfortable. He says, I didn't decide until 5 minutes before it happened that this was really going to go down.
Yeah, that pissed me off.
And then I'm thinking to myself, we shouldn't do it. But then I heard Paul walking toward him, so I figured we might as well go ahead. It's done now. They're both there. Phillip turns the corner. Both boys take 2 shots.
Yeah. The way Colt described it, too, was that he shot once and then Paul shot and then Colt shot again and then Paul shot again. But Paul describes it differently. Did you hear his testimony about that?
Now, didn't he say they each only shot once?
Yeah, Paul did.
Yeah.
But Colt said
too.
Twice. And then there were some other discrepancies, too, where the police said that he was shot twice. But then the family said, he had 4 shots, 2 in his chest, 2 in his face. So I don't even know if, which one is accurate, honestly. I don't have an autopsy report.
Right, and then it makes you uncomfortable to think how many years these children are spending in jail. We can't even get the actual facts 8 years later. Mm-hmm. The boys, they kill him. They run outside to tell Chase, dude, you gotta see this.
Yeah, and that part too. What the heck? It's almost like they're excited about it, which obviously they were.
Well, it's almost like they're children.
Yeah, dude, you gotta see this.
Because
This is
they
so
are,
cool. Yeah.
They all go inside and then they spend a couple of hours in there. I figured they would probably had to wait till it got dark to drive. They do take Philip's wallet and then they steal his truck. And they drive how many miles away, do you remember?
200 miles away to Peru, Illinois.
The middle of the night. And, people think it's suspicious that there's 3 young boys trying to use a Coinstar in Walmart at 3 o'clock in the morning. Because they are children and they don't really think,
they're not thinking about
people will think this is suspicious.
Yeah, they're not thinking anything like that. And I think one of the employees was the one that called the cops, and she was like, yeah, it just seems a little odd. There's 3 very young boys walking around the store with a jar of change. And then I think it was Colt that said, yeah, we had change, but we just wanted money. And I'm just like, he says it so nonchalantly, like, it's still money, bro.
Then as soon as the police get there, Chase, the boy who, didn't shoot or go inside, he pretty much just lays it all out.
Mm-hmm.
So she calls back and has the police in Indiana go check. And sure enough, the story is true. And Phillip is there dead and on the kitchen floor.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've taken the 3 boys into custody and the police say, they're all really relaxed. Really don't seem like this is a big deal since they are children.
When they called the cops and the cops in that town went, and I think it was Cromwell, Illinois, or Cromwell, Indiana is where the Lundy house was. So the cops went in there and they broke down the door and found his body, and they're like, yep, there's for sure a dead guy here. But the thing is, like, the mom of Paul, I guess she woke up that morning and she noticed that her 12-year-old son's not in his bedroom, and obviously at 12 years old, you're not expecting your child to just come and go as they please, so obviously she gets a little worried. And she starts asking the sisters, like, I believe Rowan and Carolyn were their names. And she's like, hey, where's Paul at? Where's he at? And the one sister was
and they knew she knew, of course.
Yeah, she knew. She knew the night before that he was sneaking out to hang out with Colt. And she's like, oh, I don't know. And the other one's like, oh, you might want to check Colt's house because they were hanging out yesterday. So then she goes there and sees the caution tape set up around the house. And she's like, what happened here? Did somebody die? And they said, yes, ma'am, somebody died. And I'm just thinking to myself,
she specifically said, was there a murder here? Like, that's a weird-ass question.
Right. Almost like she expected that was what happened. Like, just because you see caution tape doesn't mean there was a murder. But that was her question to the police officer.
A crime or somebody's dead, but it doesn't necessarily mean a full-on murder. I thought that was weird.
I thought it was strange, too.
Sure. I was just like, I just didn't understand
why that would be her question. Yeah.
But I wish they would have elaborated on who did you think was murdered? Like, did she think it was domestic violence?
Oh, yeah.
Or, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I would understand that, too, because didn't the family, like Paul's family, say that Colt had always mentioned how his stepdad was abusive and violent and drank a lot, and they didn't even want Colt at their house. The mom banned him from coming to their house and didn't even want Paul to hang out with him because he was a bad influence. So,
well, I mean, he was freaking 15, dude. Why would your 12-year-old even be hanging around with a 15-year-old?
I know.
That
and they say
there is the number one thing that is wrong with this story is that your 12-year-old should not have 15-year-old friends.
That's true. They're in a totally different age, like they're in a totally different like mindset at that age. And
yeah, that's like junior high, because I'm pretty sure Paul Henry was in the 7th grade.
Yeah, that's just odd.
So that's a pretty large difference. That leads me toward the whole thing I'm saying about how I don't like Colt Lundy.
Right.
Sometimes with these children, you get certain amounts of empathy at all different levels based on what you can get from them, especially in interviews. I didn't like anything I got from him.
Oh, yeah.
Paul Henry's parents, in their interviews, they seemed like nice people. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, where's Colt's mom?
I was
Didn't
too.
see hide nor hair of her, although we do get a surprise appearance by Colt's biological father, having been missing from the ages of 7 and 12, only to show up right as your son murders.
Yeah, I found that a little disturbing, and I didn't dig into it too much because I was like, oh shit, I'm going to be on this forever now, because I thought that was very, very odd.
I just would have liked to have heard something from Colt's mom. I can understand if she didn't want to say anything because nothing good was said about her. Mm-hmm. But you would hope she would come on and make some kind of, try to make some kind of justification. We'll go back to the crime real quick. The boys, they've been taken into custody. We do see videotape footage of Paul's interrogation. to which his mom was in there and his dad was watching from the outside. And this is where everyone finds out his level of involvement, because at first they allowed him to speak to the police thinking that his fingerprints were on the gun because he had